Welcome back to the deep dive. So, last time we were really exploring the profound, gentle power of water, weren't we? That central metaphor in Laozi's wisdom.
The quiet strength, the adaptability, yielding his power.
Exactly. Showing us that strength in yielding. Today, though, we're shifting gears pretty dramatically.
We are.
We turn to chapter 9 of the Dao De Jing. And wow, in stark contrast to that gentle flow of water, this chapter offers, well, a series of incredibly sharp warnings.
Sharp is a good word for it. Direct, almost bracing.
It really is. It feels like it directly confronts so many of our modern-day obsessions, The constant push for more, the endless accumulation, this relentless pursuit of unending success.
Things that feel very, very current.
Totally. In a world that constantly tells us more is better, that you should always be striving, always achieving, Laozi just throws that assumption right out.
Challenges it, fundamentally.
He challenges our deepest notions of what true achievement actually looks like. And he urges us to consider something pretty radical, actually, even though it's ancient. The profound wisdom of knowing when and how to let go.
A wisdom we seem to have largely forgotten, maybe.
Or actively ignore it. So our mission today is to really unpack this powerful chapter. We want to understand its literal message first, then dive into its core wisdom, which is surprisingly relevant. And then, maybe most importantly, explore how these ancient insights can be genuinely applicable and maybe even transformative in your life today, finding freedom in a very unexpected place, perhaps.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how Laozi does it. How he manages to distill these incredibly complex philosophical ideas into practical guidance.
Right.
Using these vivid, totally relatable images. This chapter, even though it's, thousands of years old, it speaks directly to the pressures so many of us feel right now. That relentless urge to constantly strive, to acquire more, to, never quite feel satisfied with what we have or what we've already done.
The constant not enough feeling.
Exactly. It really cuts through a lot of the noise and anxiety of contemporary life. It's quite remarkable.
It is. And you mentioned something before we started recording about the data aging itself, its structure.
Oh, right. Yeah, before we dive right into the text, it's worth just taking a moment to appreciate the unique nature of the Dao De Jing.
Okay.
It wasn't originally conceived, as a linear narrative, like a novel you read from start to finish.
Right. Not chapter 1, then chapter 2 in strict order.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead, many interpreters, people like Hans-Georg Müller, describe it more as a collection of interconnected oral wisdom sayings.
Okay. More like pearls on a string, maybe, but not necessarily in a fixed order.
Or even less linear than that. Think of it less like a textbook, meticulously organized, and more like a vast, shimmering network, like a web of profound proverbs and insights.
A network. I like that.
Yeah. You can theoretically dip into almost any chapter and find these deep, resonant connections throughout the entire work, because the motifs, the core principles, they're constantly echoing and reinforcing each other.
So themes repeat and weave together.
Precisely. It's like a mosaic where every single piece contributes to the overall picture, no matter where you start looking.
That changes how you approach reading it, doesn't it?
It really does. And, the global impact of this work is just undeniable. Scholars like Zhang Jing highlight that the Dao De Jing is one of the most translated Chinese classics ever.
Wow.
It stands right alongside foundational texts like the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita in terms of its reach, certainly in the English-speaking world.
So it's not some obscure philosophical text.
Not at all. It truly is a timeless thought treasure for all of humanity, offering wisdom that just transcends cultures and centuries.
That context is so important. It tells us this isn't about memorizing arguments in order, but about absorbing these profound truths that resonate across different parts of life. Okay, so with that network idea in mind, let's turn our attention to Chapter 9 itself. I'm going to read D.C. Lao's translation. It's widely respected, very clear, elegant. Listen closely to the imagery Laozi presents here. To hold and fill a cup to overflowing is not as good as to stop in time.
Okay.
To hammer and sharpen a sword cannot ensure it will long be preserved.
Interesting.
A hall full of gold and jade can never be safe. To be proud with wealth and honor is to sow the seeds of one's own downfall.
Oof. That one hits hard.
Doesn't it? And finally, the conclusion. To retire when the task is accomplished is the way of heaven.
Right. So you read those lines, and on the surface, they seem almost deceptively simple, don't they?
Yeah, like little bits of folk wisdom almost.
Exactly, like little proverbs. but they pack a tremendous amount of meaning. At its most literal level, yeah, this chapter is a stark warning.
A warning against what?
Against overdoing things, against pushing anything, an action, an ambition, maybe even an emotion beyond its natural, optimal point. Laozi is inviting us to just observe the natural consequences of going too far.
Okay, let's break down those images then. The first one, the cup.
The overflowing cup, it's such a direct, universally understandable metaphor, right?
Yeah, you can picture it immediately.
Imagine yourself trying to pour more water into a cup that's already completely full. What happens?
It spills. It makes a mess.
Exactly. It spills over, it's wasted. And not only is the excess lost, but you've likely created a mess, maybe even lost some of what you already had in the cup if it tips.
Right.
Laozi's message here is crystal clear. It's profoundly better to stop in time, to know precisely when enough is enough, than to overfill and risk losing what you've worked to gain.
And that's not just about physical cups of water, obviously.
Yeah, at all. It applies to effort in your work, ambition in your career, even, say, emotional responses in your relationships. Think about how many times in life we've tried to cram just one more thing onto our plates.
Oh yeah, guilty.
Only to find ourselves completely overwhelmed, stressed out, and ultimately ineffective. Laozi reminds us that capacity has a limit. Wisdom lies in recognizing that limit.
Knowing when to say, okay, the cup is full.
Precisely. Then, the next image. The sharpened sword.
This one's a bit different. Sharpening sounds like a good thing.
It does initially. If you sharpen a blade excessively beyond its ideal functional edge, you might think you're making it stronger, more effective, more cutting.
Right. Sharper is better.
But the truth is you're often doing the opposite. You're making the metal thinner, more brittle, prone to chipping, or even breaking entirely under pressure.
Ah, I see. So what was meant to be strong becomes fragile.
Exactly. It speaks to this deeper truth. Extreme strength, or maybe extreme focus pushed too far, can paradoxically become its own undoing. It turns what seems like an advantage into a critical vulnerability.
Like perfectionism gone wrong.
That's a great example. Or think about an aggressive, unyielding approach in negotiations or in leadership. That very intensity, if pushed too far, can exhaust itself, break trust, destroy relationships. It's about how raw power or brilliance, if it's untempered by discernment, by knowing when to ease up, can actually self-destruct.
Okay, that makes sense. Then the golden jade.
Yeah, the image of golden jade filling a hall, accumulating excessive wealth, surrounding yourself with precious things. It seems like the ultimate path to security and contentment, doesn't it? That's the dream we're often sold.
It is. Financial security, luxury.
Yet, Laozi suggests it rarely brings true security. Instead, it often brings its opposite. Heightened insecurity, constant anxiety about loss, a relentless need to protect what you have.
The burden of possessions.
Absolutely. Think of the burden that comes with vast material wealth, the worry, the maintenance, the complex arrangements, the fear of theft or loss, and crucially, the accompanying pride that so often comes with such wealth and honor. Laozi presents that pride as a direct catalyst for downfall.
Sowing the seeds of your own downfall, he says.
Exactly. It points to a core Taoist understanding of reversal. This fundamental dialectical principle is always at play in the universe. As Ching emphasizes, there's this deep interplay where fortune is what misfortune leans on, misfortune is what fortune hides in.
So good times contain the potential for bad and vice versa.
Precisely. It's a reminder that what appears to be a blessing can contain the seeds of its opposite, especially if you grasp it too tightly or become arrogant about it. Zhang Jing also mentions an ancient proverb that fits perfectly here. Gold and jade fill the hall, none can keep them.
Impermanence.
Exactly. It's a profound observation on the impermanence of material things and the inherent dangers of getting too attached to them. True security, Laozi implies, doesn't come from what you have. It comes from how you are, your state of being.
Which leads to the last line, the solution.
Yes. Finally, Laozi offers us the solution, retirement. To retire when the task is accomplished is the way of heaven.
Okay, retire. What does that mean here? It sounds passive.
It does, but it's presented as the wise response to all these pitfalls of overdoing and overpossessing. It's about stepping back gracefully once a task is completed, knowing precisely when to exit the stage, so to speak.
So it's not about giving up. Or being lazy.
Not in the Taoist sense, no. It's not about shirking responsibility or becoming idle. It's about aligning yourself with the harmony and the natural rhythm of the Tao, the flow of things.
Oh, so?
It's about not clinging to achievement or status or power, understanding that completion itself is just a phase in a cycle, not a permanent state you need to hold on to forever.
Letting go of the outcome, almost.
Letting go of the attachment to the outcome and the need to constantly possess or display the success.
Yeah. Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the philosophy, Laozi is subtly bringing in this intricate interplay between Tao and Day.
Right. You mentioned Tao and De earlier. Can you remind us?
Sure, think of Tao as the overarching objective totality of all natural laws and patterns. It's like the vast ceaseless ocean, the interconnected cosmic process that encompasses everything. It just is. The way, the ultimate reality.
Kind of. And De, then, often translated as virtue or excellence or potency. That's the specific individual manifestation or portion of the Tao that we obtain and embody.
Our own piece of the Tao.
Sort of. It's like the portion of water you might drink from that vast ocean. It's your specific capacity, your unique way of aligning with that greater flow. The influential interpreter Wang Bei put it beautifully. De is gaining. How is de gained? Through Tao.
Okay, so D comes from aligning with Tao.
Exactly. So when Laozi writes chapter 9, he's essentially telling us that true virtue, true excellence, true De, comes from understanding and aligning with these overarching patterns of the Tao, especially the natural rhythm of things, the cycles of rising and falling, doing and completing.
So this chapter is a guide for that alignment.
Precisely. It serves as a guide for how our individual actions, our De, must follow the universal flow, the Tao, to be truly effective, enduring, and ultimately to bring us peace. It's practical advice grounded in cosmic principle.
That connection between Tao and Tao really deepens the meaning, doesn't it? It makes it clear this chapter isn't just, a random list of warnings.
Not at all.
It's a deep dive into a vital Taoist principle.
Mm.
This art, as you called it, of knowing when enough is enough.
Yes.
You mentioned the Chinese phrase for this.
You see, literally knowing stop or knowing when to stop.
Zish, knowing when to stop. It's about recognizing that optimal point, isn't it? The peak of an endeavor, maybe. And then having the wisdom and maybe the discipline to actually step back.
Discipline is a good word for it because our impulses often push us forward.
Right. Instead of continuing to push and inevitably, as Laozi warns, falling or spilling over, this is such a countercultural idea in our modern world of constant striving.
It really is. And this concept of knowing when to stop, du ji, it mirrors the natural world's rhythms with remarkable precision. Just observe. Think about the sun.
Rises, peaks at noon, sets.
Exactly. It rises, it reaches its zenith at noon, and then it naturally begins its descent. Or the moon. It waxes to fullness, and then it naturally begins to wane. There's a natural, ceaseless, cadenced flow to experience in the cosmos.
A rhythm.
Yes. And scholars like Ames and Hall describe this flow as the very essence of the Tao, not some permanent fixed reality, but a dynamic, ongoing process. Overreaching, trying to stay at the peak forever, defies this natural rhythm. It creates imbalance and almost inevitably invites reversal or collapse.
So trying to hold on to the peak is actually unnatural.
From this perspective, yes, Wang Bi, that brilliant early interpreter of the Tao Te Ching, had a famous comment on this. He said that someone with virtue, someone accomplished, who insists on fullness, on always pushing for more, always needing to be at their absolute peak, actually risks more than someone who has nothing at all.
That's counterintuitive. Why more risk?
Because if you're always striving for absolute fullness, there's no space left. No room for growth, no flexibility, no capacity to adapt when things inevitably change. As the contemporary scholar Yu Qiu puts it quite beautifully, to be full is to deprive oneself of space.
Wow. To be full is to deprive oneself of space.
That's powerful.
Isn't it? It's a bit like that ancient Greek myth of Icarus. Remember?
He flew too close to the sun.
Right. His father Daedalus warned him don't fly too high near the sun or too low near the sea. But Icarus, filled with the sheer exhilaration of flight, maybe a touch of youthful overconfidence,
Got carried away.
he ignored the warning, soared higher and higher, fueled by overextension, ambition, until the sun melted the wax in his wings. And then the inevitable collapse. That myth, thousands of years after Laozi, just perfectly illustrates this timeless danger of pushing past the optimal point, of not knowing when to stop.
It really does. And how does this connect to desire? You mentioned Taoism has a nuanced view. Yeah, it's often misunderstood. Hans-Georg Mahler makes a great point here. Taoism isn't really about ascetic denial of pleasures. It's not about purging yourself of all wants or living some grim, joyless life.
That's often the stereotype, isn't it?
It is, but actually it's a very sophisticated approach to human well-being. It's more about preventing the emergence of ultimately insatiable craving.
Insatiable cravings. Like what?
Like the kind of desires that the moment they're satisfied immediately give birth to a new, even stronger craving. You get the thing you wanted and instantly you want the next thing.
The hedonic treadmill.
Exactly. These insatiable desires, Lousy warns, relativize your present and natural contentment, meaning they make whatever you have right now feel insufficient, lacking.
Okay. So they undermine your current happiness.
Precisely. So it's almost a paradoxical hedonism in a way. Taoism aims for immediate, genuine satisfaction and contentment by preventing this continuous projection of satisfaction into some elusive future.
Finding joy now, not always chasing it.
Exactly. The idea is that true contentment comes from accepting and appreciating what is in this moment. If you're constantly chasing the next desire, the next big thing, you're basically condemning yourself to always living in a state of discontent, always believing true satisfaction is just over the horizon. Lousy invites you to find it right here, right now, by managing those runaway desires.
That's such a liberating way to think about desire. Not purging it, but recognizing where the endless chase actually leads often to more discontent, ironically. So, going back to the images, what about over-sharpness? How does that translate beyond just a physical sword blade? What's the broader lesson there?
Over-sharpness, I think, speaks to the danger of aggression or maybe brilliance or even a particular skill pushed too far, to the point where it becomes self-destructive.
Okay, how so?
Think about a person who is incredibly intelligent, strategically brilliant, or exceptionally talented in one area. If that brilliance isn't tempered by humility, by empathy, by a sense of proportion, if it's constantly deployed aggressively, without restraint, it can easily turn against them.
Like being too clever for your own good.
Exactly that phrase. It's the person who always has to be the smartest one in the room, or has to win every single argument, or dominate every conversation. That intensity, if it's unchecked, can alienate allies, create enemies, burn bridges, and ultimately lead to isolation or even downfall.
Right, you push people away.
You do. And historically, we see this pattern play out time and time again. Consider someone like the strategist Su Qian from the Warring States period in China.
Okay.
Known for his formidable intellect, his cunning diplomacy, he wielded immense influence, creating this powerful North-South alliance against the rising state of Qin, a huge achievement.
Sounds successful.
He was, very. But his very success and the resentments and rivalries it inevitably bred among competing states ultimately led to his assassination. His sharpness created enemies.
So his strength became his weakness.
In a way, yes. Or think, in a completely different era, of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Okay, famous example.
Tactical genius, undeniable charisma, insatiable ambition led him to conquer vast territories across Europe. But his relentless pursuit of power beyond all reasonable limits, his apparent inability to ever say enough, eventually led to catastrophic overreach, the invasion of Russia, the Peninsular War, and ultimately his downfall and exile.
He didn't know when to stop.
He didn't seem to. In both cases, Su Qian and Napoleon, you could argue their greatest strengths, their intellect, their ambition, when untempered by the wisdom of knowing when to hold back, when enough was enough, became their fatal flaws.
It links back to that idea of reversal.
Absolutely. Laozi had this deep understanding of dialectics. He saw that all things exist in opposing pairs, high and low, good and bad, fortune and misfortune, and that they inherently tend to reverse into their opposites. That concept, which Zhang Jing also highlighted, underpins this warning. Pushing anything, even a strength, to its absolute extreme risks transforming it into its opposite. The over-sharp becomes brittle. The over-brilliant can become foolishly reckless.
And that next warning about the burden of wealth and pride feels just incredibly relevant today, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
We see it playing out everywhere on social media, in the news cycles, often maybe even in our own communities or lives.
Yeah.
The pursuit of more often seems to bring anything but peace. It feels like a constant struggle for so many.
It really does. Wealth, when it's pursued excessively, when it becomes the primary goal and is hoarded, it rarely delivers the lasting security or deep contentment it promises on the surface.
What does it deliver instead?
Often, anxiety. Anxiety about maintaining it, protecting it, a constant fear of loss. It can easily become a heavy burden rather than a source of genuine freedom. Think about the elaborate security systems people need, the complex financial planning just to manage it, the constant worry about market fluctuations that can accompany vast fortunes. It's a far cry from the simple peace it's often marketed to provide.
Yeah, not exactly tranquility.
Not always. And then there's pride. Lousy perhaps views pride as the most insidious danger here.
Why insidious?
Because when individuals become overly proud of their accomplishments, their wealth, their status, even their perceived moral virtue, they become profoundly vulnerable. This excessive self-regard often blinds them to reality.
How so?
It makes them dismiss criticism, even constructive feedback. It can alienate those around them because they seem arrogant or dismissive. And it leads them to overestimate their own infallibility, making them prone to reckless decisions.
We see echoes of this throughout history, don't we?
Constantly. From, say, the Roman elites whose vast fortunes and decadent lifestyles, fueled by pride, arguably contributed to moral decay and political instability, ultimately weakening the empire, to the endless celebrity downfalls we witness today. These are so often precipitated by arrogance, by a sense of invincibility, a disconnect from the real consequences of their actions. Laozi reminds us that pride isn't some external affliction visited upon us. It is fundamentally a wound we inflict upon ourselves.
A self-inflicted wound. Oh, that's a sobering thought.
It is. It's a self-imposed limitation on our growth, our connection with others, and our overall well-being.
And this ties into the Taoist view of morality you mentioned, the negative ethics.
Yeah, it does. Mahler suggests Taoist ethics are negative in the sense that they don't assume that making explicit moral judgments or striving to be overtly virtuous is always necessary to do good.
That sounds strange. Don't we need morality?
Well, Mahler argues that excessive morality, especially a zealous, self-congratulatory pursuit of being righteous, can actually become a social pathology.
How?
It can lead straight back to arrogance, self-importance, judging others, viewing them as less worthy because they don't meet your high standards. Think of moral grandstanding.
Ah, okay. I see
The
that.
Taoist emphasis instead is often on acting indifferently. Now, that doesn't mean carelessly or without compassion. It means acting in a way that allows things to unfold naturally without imposing rigid, self-righteous agendas or judgmental moral frameworks onto the world or onto other people.
Letting things be more.
Exactly. This non-imposition, this letting things be, is paradoxically seen as the path to good outcomes, without needing the moral glorification or the dangerous pride that often comes with feeling like you are the one making things right.
So if all this overdoing, overpossessing, overtried, if it's all so dangerous, what's Laozi's ultimate solution in this chapter? He points to retirement as the key.
Yes.
But what does that truly mean in a practical sense, especially for us, living in this busy, demanding, highly competitive modern world? It can't just mean literally quitting everything, can it? That doesn't seem feasible for most people.
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And it's where this concept is often misunderstood. Retirement in this Taoist context isn't necessarily about physically retreating from life.
Not becoming a hermit on a mountain.
Not necessarily, no.
Gotcha.
Or literally stopping all your work and responsibilities. As the scholar Ching clarifies, it's primarily about an internal shift. It's about letting go of attachment to success.
Attachment, okay.
Success, once achieved, doesn't need to be owned or clung to like a personal trophy, defining who you are. It means stepping back mentally, releasing the need to claim all the credit, cultivating a deep, abiding sense of humility.
So it's an internal posture, a mindset.
Exactly. It's a mindset of non-ownership of outcomes. Even if you were instrumental in creating them, you do the work, you achieve the goal, and then you mentally release it. You don't build your identity solely around it.
And nature is the model again.
Nature, once again, offers the perfect model for this principle. Think about the seasons. Spring does its work, brings life, and then yields to summer.
Summer ripens everything.
And then gives way to autumn's harvest and decline. Autumn yields to winter's rest. There's this ceaseless transformation, this natural flow of completion and renewal. Each season fulfills its purpose and then gracefully steps aside for the next.
Without clinging.
Without clinging. The spontaneous unfolding of all natural processes when they're left free of interference is what Ames and Hall calls Ziran, self-so, things being naturally as they are.
Ziran, self-so.
It's the universe's way of constantly renewing itself by letting go of what has fulfilled its purpose. Now, it's true, some scholars, like Wang Fuzi, critique this idea a bit, arguing that heaven never truly rests, it's always active.
Right.
But most interpretations see retirement here primarily as aligning with this cosmic order, this natural rhythm of completion and renewal. It's not some cunning strategy for human gain or a literal command to cease all activity. It's a profound spiritual stance of alignment and acceptance of natural cycles.
Okay, that makes more sense than just stopping everything. And what about the modern take on this?
Well, the modern scholar Fu Perong offers a really fresh and I think incredibly liberating view that resonates powerfully today.
What's his take?
He suggests that this retirement can mean moving beyond the relentless rat race, that constant striving for the next promotion, the next raise, the next status symbol, moving beyond that into a state of genuine autonomy.
Autonomy.
It could absolutely mean continuing to be active, maybe even more active, but in a fundamentally different way. Perhaps shifting focus towards mentoring others, sharing your wisdom, teaching from your experience, or pursuing passions with true freedom and purpose, unburdened by the need for constant external validation or the insatiable hunger for more.
So you're acting from a different place inside.
Exactly. You're no longer trying to prove anything to anyone. You're not constantly striving for the next rung on the ladder just for the sake of climbing. You're simply acting effectively from a place of inner alignment and maybe contribution rather than accumulation.
That sounds peaceful, actually.
Doesn't it? And this connects really strongly to that core Taoist ideal of the uncarved block.
The uncarved block, right, simple, natural state.
As Michael Lafargue discusses it, Pew represents the simple, unaffected integrity, a return to an original state, free from all the artificial improvements or complications that distract us from our natural goodness and true purpose. This retired state, this autonomy, is what you return to when constant efficacy suffices.
When just doing what's needed is enough.
Precisely. When your actions are simply effective and aligned with the Tao, without needing external recognition, fancy titles, embellishment, or that endless push for more, it's about finding sufficiency within.
That's a powerful shift in perspective. It really moves retirement from being just an end state, like stopping work at 65, to a continuous mindset, a way of engaging with life all along.
Exactly. It's available now.
So what does this all mean for us today? Let's bring it home. How does this ancient wisdom, knowing when to stop, gracefully stepping back, how does it actually play out in real life? In our jobs, our relationships, our personal projects, maybe even in public life? This isn't just dusty philosophy. It feels like a profound approach to living.
It truly is. And we can see it illustrated powerfully by examples from history, which really bring it to life. One of the most compelling, I think, is the story of Cincinnatus.
Cincinnatus, the Roman guy.
That's the one. Roman farmer, citizen. And in a moment of grave national crisis back in the 5th century BC, the Roman Senate granted him absolute emergency power, made him dictator.
To save Rome.
Exactly. His mission was to save Rome from invading forces. And remarkably, he secured this swift, decisive victory against Rome's enemies in just 15 days. An astounding feat.
Wow, 15 days.
But then, and this is the astonishing part, he immediately resigned his immense power, gave it all back, declined all the accolades, resisted the huge temptation to extend his authority, and simply returned to his farm.
Just went back to farming.
Went back to farming. His legacy endures precisely because he knew when to stop.
Yeah.
He knew when the task was accomplished, and he stepped back from the spotlight, back from the intoxicating temptations of continued power.
He embodied that retirement principle.
Perfectly. It embodies the Taoist critique of the impressive ruler, the ruler who's always seeking self-promotion and glory, as Lafargue notes. The truly great ruler, in the Taoist view, operates with a low profile. They allow good order to appear spontaneously among the people without needing to constantly assert their presence or claim all the credit. Cincinnatus wasn't trying to make a name for himself. He simply did what was needed, accomplished the task, and then returned to his natural state. That demonstrates a profound integrity that is echoed through millennia as an example of civic virtue.
That's an amazing historical example. What about something more everyday?
Well, we see this wisdom applied constantly, maybe even unconsciously, in the artist's craft.
Ah, interesting. How so?
Great artists in any field understand the critical value of stopping. Whether it's a painter working on a canvas, a sculptor shaping clay, a musician composing a piece, or a writer crafting a novel.
Yeah.
They intuitively know that one extra brushstroke, one more note added just because, one too many adjectives, it can ruin the masterpiece.
Less is more sometimes.
Exactly. Perfection, in art as perhaps in life, lies not in just adding more and more, not in striving for some unattainable absolute fullness or overcompletion. It lies in knowing precisely when something is complete. when it has reached its optimal state of expression and flow.
Recognizing that tipping point again.
Yes, they understand that to push beyond that point is to introduce fragility or excess or unnecessary complication that ultimately diminishes the work's power and integrity. It's about respecting the process and recognizing true completion, rather than letting ambition or that desire for more lead you to undo what you've already achieved.
Those are such clear examples. Cincinnatus and the artist, they really show that this isn't about being passive or just giving up. It's about a highly active, discerning choice.
A very conscious choice.
So building on that, this isn't just theoretical stuff for us to admire. For you, listening right now, how do we actually integrate this wisdom of letting go into our daily lives? What are the practical steps you can take to apply these profound insights to your own unique circumstances, your career, your relationships, your personal well-being?
Right. Because Laozi doesn't just give us warnings, he gives us implicitly clear guidance for personal practice. A real guide for modern minds navigating a world that constantly demands more. It's not about a rigid formula, but about cultivating deeper awareness and making conscious choices.
Okay, so what's the first step?
First, and this is absolutely crucial, 1, recognize the tipping point. This is the foundation. It requires self-awareness. You have to regularly ask yourself, with real introspection and honesty, am I near the point of overflowing?
Checking in with yourself.
Constantly. Recognizing with clarity when you're pushing things too far. When the pursuit of more work, more stuff, more intensity is no longer serving you, but is actually diminishing your well-being or the quality of what you're doing.
Can you give an example?
Sure. In your professional life, if chronic overtime is consistently leading to burnout, if it's reducing your physical health, making you irritable, eroding your relationships outside work, you've likely crossed that line. More work is actually becoming counterproductive.
Making you less effective overall.
Exactly. Or in your personal life, if accumulating more possessions, the new car, the bigger house, the latest gadget, even just more clothes, if it's creating anxiety rather than peace.
Because you have to pay for it, store it, maintain it.
Right. If it's burying you in debt or just cluttering your mental space, then you've probably crossed that line where more isn't better. This is about becoming acutely aware of those disquieting desires, as the Taoists called them, that destroy natural harmony. Desires often stemming from those artificial improvements Lafargue talks about. It's learning to notice when your actions are driven by an insatiable craving rather than genuine need or authentic contentment. And that often requires just slowing down and truly listening to your inner signals, body and mind.
Okay, recognize the tipping point. What's next?
Once you've recognized that point, the next step is wise action. 2, know when to stop, the wisdom of shedding. This isn't weakness, it's a deliberate, empowered choice. It's about consciously shedding what no longer serves you or the situation. Letting go.
Shedding, like taking things off your plate.
That's one way. Practically, it could manifest in countless ways. It might mean limiting your news intake, especially the sensationalized, polarizing stuff, or setting strict boundaries on your time scrolling through social media to avoid that mental overload and constant agitation.
Protecting your mental space.
Exactly. It could involve speaking less in conversations, seriously, making space for others to contribute, fostering deeper listening and presence, embodying that softness or nothingness. Lafargue describes that subtle, indirect influence that feels like nothing because it's intangible, yet it can be profoundly powerful. Think how much more impactful a few well-chosen words can be compared to just a torrent of chatter.
It's true. Quality over quantity.
And when you receive praise or recognition for something you've done well, respond with genuine humility. Deflect the pride that Laozi warns against, rather than clinging to it or letting it inflate your ego. Share the credit. This is about actively practicing restraint and non-assertion, allowing your actions and their results to speak for themselves without needing that constant external validation.
Shedding the need for validation too, then.
That's a big part of it, yes.
Okay, recognize the tipping point, know when to stop and shed. What's the third step?
Finally, and this is perhaps the most transformative step, 3, practice retiring, the mindset of non-ownership. This is the deepest and most liberating part. It involves a profound internal shift in how you relate to your achievements, your contributions, your successes.
Non-ownership. How does that work?
You consciously move from thinking of successes as solely my success, my accomplishment, my credit, my glory, to viewing them more broadly, maybe as a shared accomplishment, a natural outcome of collective effort, or maybe even just a spontaneous manifestation of being aligned with the Tao, with the flow of things.
Letting go of the ego's grip.
Precisely. Releasing your ego's tight grip on the outcome. consciously sharing credit generously with everyone who contributed, and letting go internally of that pervasive need for external validation or perpetual recognition for past glories.
So it's not about becoming idle.
Not at all. This internal retirement isn't about becoming disengaged. Quite the opposite. It actually frees up immense mental and emotional energy that was previously consumed by clinging, defending, striving for recognition.
Ah, okay, so it creates space.
It creates space. It prepares the ground for future growth, for new possibilities, for deeper and perhaps more authentic engagement, because you're aligned with the Tao's continuous process of emergence and transformation. It means letting go of grasping and embracing that subtle, powerful Tao that radiates from within, that quiet efficacy, that inner potency that fosters harmony, rather than constantly chasing external validation or external more. It's a profound liberation, really, moving from a mindset of relentless accumulation to one of graceful release and effortless flow.
To retire when the task is accomplished is the way of heaven. It really lands differently now, doesn't it?
It does.
In a world that is just relentlessly obsessed with more achievement, more possessions, more recognition, more speed, more everything, Laozi offers this profound counter-narrative, the transformative wisdom of enough. Such a radical idea, especially today, but it feels like one that promises real freedom. Real success, it turns out, maybe isn't in grasping and holding tighter and tighter, but in the profound, liberating art of gracefully letting go. It's about recognizing that constant striving against the natural rhythm of things often leads not to greater gains, but actually to diminishing returns, internal exhaustion, and sometimes even self-destruction. Laozi invites you to find true power in restraint and deep peace in completion.
And what's truly provocative here, I think, is how this letting go isn't passive or weak, as we might initially perceive it based on our cultural conditioning.
Right, it sounds like giving up.
But it's not. It's an active choice. It's actually a sophisticated strategy to align yourself with the cosmic process itself. When you learn to let go internally, when you release that tight attachment to outcomes and the need for external credit, you don't just feel lighter and more at peace within yourself, although that certainly happens.
What else happens?
You begin to embody a subtle yet immensely powerful deek, that inner virtue or potency we talked about. And this quiet influence, this calm centeredness, it radiates outward. It fosters harmony in your relationships, in your work, in your environment, without you ever needing to explicitly do anything forceful or assert your will aggressively.
So it's an influence that doesn't require force.
Exactly. It's a quiet influence that shapes the world around you, allowing things to unfold naturally and effectively, precisely because you're not constantly interfering with their natural flow by trying to control everything or grab all the attention. It means finding strength not in control, but in yielding, not in acquisition, but in release. It's a path to true influence, perhaps, without ever needing to be noisily in charge.
Finding influence through letting go. That's something truly worth mulling over in the days to come. A very different way to think about impact.
It really is.
Well, next time, our deep dive will take us into Chapter 10. And there, Laozi asks this fundamental question that really challenges our usual notions of leadership and capability. In loving the people and governing the state, can you be without knowledge?
Ooh, that's intriguing.
Isn't it? We'll explore the intricate art of inner cultivation and how it profoundly shapes effective leadership, both for yourself and potentially for others. It should be fascinating. See you then.